Okay, hello and welcome to another episode of Hiring and Inspiring. Today's guest is my good friend Elizabeth Kaur. Liz is a friend of mine. We met at the gym, our CrossFit gym here in Melbourne. She works as a nurse here in Melbourne, has done for a while. And like I sometimes like to do on this show, I like to get someone from a completely different industry, someone who works in a job that I know nothing really about, so I can learn from them and they can share a little bit about their career journey, what they get up to, and just for me to expand my horizons on this show sometimes as well. So, Liz, thank you very much for joining me on the show with that introduction as well. Welcome. How are you getting on?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's very exciting.
That's it. That's it. So
Yeah.
look, let's kick it off. I introed you as you work as a nurse, have done for a number of years. How long have you been doing it specifically, and how did you get into it initially?
Yeah. So I've been a nurse for about 10 years now. Um, Probably about 4 years of working back in Singapore, and then about 5.5-ish years here in Melbourne, Australia. How I got into it was I basically just studied nursing in school. So once I was done with my A levels, I went on to do my diploma in nursing. And then I did my degree in nursing, and then I worked for about maybe 2 years after that, moved here, and yeah, I've just carried on since then. So that's just, yeah, basically just studied nursing in school, and then that led me to working as a nurse.
So it's been your whole career really then?
It has been, yeah, I've never done anything else apart from like
Yeah,
casual jobs, during school holidays and
yeah.
stuff. I've never actually worked in any other industry apart from
What casual
nurse.
jobs have you done, by the way?
I've worked at a grocery store. I've worked at Starbucks. I've worked at
Yeah,
bookstore. Yeah, just random stuff.
nice.
But yeah, yeah,
Well, I didn't get you on to talk about those. Don't worry. Um,
yeah, yeah.
the the
No
nursing
worries,
stuff,
no
right?
worries. Yeah.
The nursing stuff. What I was hoping to like really understand is I don't know if there's like, this might be a silly question, but like, is there like a typical shift um in your current work? Like, is every shift different? What are some of like the typical day-to-day stuff that you do in your role?
Okay, so there is no typical shift because like intensive care or like anywhere else is as well, like people and their health is pretty much unpredictable, so anything can happen. So ideally you start your shift, you get handover for like all the patients in the intensive care where I work, and you sort of you go to your allocated patient or patients. You get individual handover from the previous shift's nurse for that patient, and then you start to do your planner on like stuff that needs to be done for that patient, whether it's like medications at this time, a scan at this time, something's going on at this time. So that's sort of like the skeletal sort of plan you have for the patients.
Yeah,
It changes by the minute, so sometimes you have a certain something that you need to do at a certain time, but if the patient deteriorates, you sort of have to deal with that first. So there really is no typical shift. Sometimes you go in thinking that the shift is going to go well because like, oh, this patient's pretty stable-ish, you sort of know what you need to do, and then
yeah,
everything goes pear-shaped because the patient starts to deteriorate. So there is really no typical shift, so it makes it very exciting
yeah,
because you just can't expect what's
yeah.
going to happen. Yeah.
That's crazy. You just rock up sometimes. You just like, yep, here we go. Like, no idea what's
Don't
gonna happen.
know.
Like,
Yeah, you
yeah,
don't know which patient you're gonna get. You don't know if sometimes you don't get allocated a patient, so you are like the access nurse or like a resource nurse. So you pretty much go around helping all the other nurses, especially if the unit's really busy. You
yeah.
go around helping all the other nurses. But then if there's like an emergency on the wards or or like in ED, for example, then you end up sort of admitting that new patient that's come in, that sort of thing. So
Okay.
yeah, it could be anything really. You just turn up and then just see what hits you.
Yeah. And you work
Yeah.
in what's known as ICU, right? what is that, and like what are some of the maybe different like types of nursing?
So there is like inpatient, mostly inpatient and outpatient nursing. So in inpatient nursing, we've got like people who work on the wards. You've got emergency. You've got intensive care, which is where I work. You've got the operating theaters. You've also got people working in like got mental health nursing. You've got aged care nursing. You've got this thing called hospital in the home, where nurses go out into patients' homes to deliver like treatment and stuff
Yeah,
that doesn't require them to stay in hospital, but they're not sort of out of the woods completely yet. So those are like outpatient sort of jobs that we have, or like nurses that we have. We've
yeah,
got clinics as well, and remote nursing as well is one thing.
yeah. Lots
And
of,
recently, aesthetic nursing, you can, injectables and stuff, Botox and all that. So that's another area of nursing that,
yeah.
yeah, that exists. Sorry, number. Yeah.
And in yours, in
Yeah.
ICU, like I don't know if you can go into the specifics, maybe, but like
Yeah.
what is maybe some of the the sort of issues that the patients are dealing with that you're sort of helping them out with?
So we deal with like I work in like an adult medical ICU. So they either have like a major organ dysfunction or multi-organ dysfunction. So they might have like issues with their heart working, or their
Yeah,
kidneys, their lungs. So either one, or like a whole bunch of them sort of, yeah. Basically it's like multi-organ dysfunction. So that leads them to be very sick in terms of like not being able to
yeah,
like maintain a blood pressure, or maintain or being able to breathe on their own and all that. So they come in to us, and we try to fix all those multi-organ dysfunctions that they have that is sort of life threatening. Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's the
Great.
kind of patients that we get. Yeah.
This question I'm going to ask you, like, I don't know if it's a tough one to answer, but like, it's around like, I guess, why do you do what you do? Like, why do you work in this field? Like, why have you also stuck around for so long doing it? Because it's obviously
Mm-hmm.
something, it's something that's important to you, I guess. What's the sort of
Yeah.
reason you do it?
I think so. I used to be a ward nurse for a couple of years before I went into intensive care. And I just feel like it's just good to know how the human body works. Like I feel like everyone has a human body, but like, do we actually know
Yeah,
like how blood flows through your heart into the rest of your body? Like it sort of just works for you, but you don't really know how certain things affect like your body functions, how like stress affects your
yeah,
heart, why do you get chest pain when you're anxious, stuff like that. So I found it really interesting to sort of find out how everything sort of works in your own body, and then be able to translate that to like patients who are ill and having, some of these dysfunctions, and sort of like basically sort of knowing everything there is to know about the human body, and then using that to help people who are sick, and sort of trying to get them back, educate them, and
yeah,
get them back into like till healthy, till they're like in the think of health.
yeah,
And yeah, so I just found that very rewarding and very satisfying. And then with intensive care, I guess it's more of just wanting to help like the sickest of the sickest, and just the huge
yeah,
satisfaction of bringing them from how close they are to like death's door,
yeah,
and then bring them out of it, and then like sending them to the wards or sending them home. It's just very satisfying to me, and I don't see myself
yeah.
doing anything
Okay.
else really. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, have you always had like that interest in like the human body and biology and stuff? Is that something that's always been
And
sort of in you?
actually not really. It sort of just like fell. I guess it just fell onto my lap pretty much. So
Okay.
after I did my A levels, that's when you like, go to uni, or go to a polytechnic or whatever, and you sort of choose what you want to do. And I didn't really know what I want to do at the point. I actually wanted to be a fiction writer. So I used to read a lot of like Neil Gaiman and
Really?
stuff, and I was like, oh, I want to be I just want to be a writer. I just want to write fiction. I just want to like publish books and all that. But then part of me just wanted I was like, like that's just so difficult to do. Like, how do you sort of break into the industry? Not like why, like,
Yeah.
and it just sort of made me think of choosing something a bit more sensible and a bit safe, because it's like, I guess it's sort of like, being a teacher or being a nurse, it's a bit more, it's like a safer sort of profession to go into. Like, it's recession proof. There's always jobs.
Yeah.
creates an
Okay.
ability for you to travel. Yeah, so that sort of fell on my lap, and then I sort of tried looking at the positives around it, which is like, oh, like it's biology, human body, like that's
Yeah.
nothing, nothing bad about going into that. And then I just sort of developed like a liking for what I do, and then
Hmm.
I just can't imagine myself doing anything else. So it kind of happened by
Yeah.
chance, I guess. Yeah.
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 And then since you've like been doing the role, has that like
Mm-hmm.
increased your sort of, I don't know what the word is, like interest or your keenness to sort of stay healthy and because I know obviously we met at the gym. You train pretty hard.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
your
That's
is
what
that
I
has
try
that has that
to.
helped your has that helped your sort of your own sort of fitness journey? Do you think?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So, like I used to just play. I mean, I used to play sports in school, but once I started like actually being a nurse, like about 10 years ago, I didn't really do any sports.
Yeah.
Like I used to go on like the random hike and like a couple of runs here and there, but sort of didn't really do any sports. And then you sort of meet patients who sort of have the similar lifestyle as you, and then just thinking that you don't want to end up like them
Yeah.
pretty
Wow.
much.
Yeah.
And yeah, and also just sort of try to adopt healthy like coping mechanisms for stress, and that sort of led me to join CrossFit, for example.
Mm,
You build a community CrossFit and just have like a healthy sort of outlet for stress, and just
yeah.
keeping yourself healthy basically. And I guess it reflects in
Yeah.
like other areas of my life, like habits and stuff that I would not think twice of embarking on, but then now I sort of think twice about it, because you see so many people who are sick and what their lifestyle is like,
Yeah.
and you just don't want to be like don't want to be like that. Oh, yeah.
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 What about you talked a little bit about the roller stuff, but like what about the sort of
Mhm.
the highs and the lows? What are some of the positives of the role? You've touched on a few, I appreciate, but like what are some of the
Mhm.
the negatives as well? Because I'm sure there are moments and times where it's pretty tough.
Yeah.
What can
um
you tell me about that?
So negatives would be like, I think because just being a shift worker, just being out of
Mm,
sync with a lot of other people in my life. Like yeah, you with your Monday to Friday sort of thing. Just
yeah.
being out of sync with most people. Just the feeling of like missing out on key events, like missing out on like weekend stuff, or like public holidays and all that.
Yeah.
Just having to deal with just having to deal with missing out on special events like that. um Another negative would be, I guess, being desensitized to like trauma and stuff, because we see a lot of obviously see a lot of trauma. A lot of times we have to detach ourselves from the situation in order to like do our job objectively.
Yeah.
But that also sort of desensitizes like me to like, I guess, trauma, like surrounding people in my like in my personal life, like outside of work,
Yeah. Okay.
when if like they're going through something, I'm like, yeah, but you're not doing as badly as that patient I've got in the hospital. Like, what are you whinging about? So I think
Yeah.
it's just
Okay.
the
Okay.
like the lack of, honestly, the lack of empathy or lack of sympathy at times, which is not great. It is a little bit helpful at work sometimes, because it doesn't like it doesn't exhaust you too much when you get too
Mm.
emotionally attached to like patients and stuff. But yeah, I think just the desensitization to trauma really just
All right.
yeah,
So I won't
sometimes
come to
it's
you
not
for some
always.
sympathy, like if I've
Okay.
like stubbed my toe or something.
Hey, if you need some tough love, I'm there for it. If you need some tough love, I'll be like, suck it up. You've gotten through this before. This will be fine.
All
Like, if
right.
you need it, yeah, yeah. I do have sympathy. I do have sympathy. Like, yeah. I'll give you some kind words. I will help you along if you stub your toe. Yeah.
Is that something
It's
that's
like,
like
nah.
developed though? Has that like developed
Uh,
over time? Do you think?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
when you first
definitely.
started,
Yeah.
were you kind of like, has it changed?
Yeah, definitely. At the start, I sort of like, I think a lot of nurses are pretty much the same as I am. Like at the start, whether you're a student nurse or like 1 or 2 years in, you sort of like, you get really sad or like you sort of build rapport with a certain patient who's been there for a while or who's been really sick, who's been
Mm.
really nice. And then they either pass away or like they get transferred somewhere else, and then you hear after that they passed away. And then you have a cry about it, or like they sort of like pass away on your shift sort of thing, and then you like
Yeah.
have a little cry about it, and you're like, oh no, like what's the whole point of this? Like it, like medicine doesn't work. It's still, it's just a nice person. You don't deserve this. Yeah, you sort of like you get really affected by it. But then it's a lot of senior nurses sort of have, so I guess, sort of like shaped us into not feeling that too much, like
Yeah.
feeling it, but then after a certain point in time, just be like, all right, you need to get back, because like that happens, and then 10 minutes later, you need to get back to work. You don't really get to like, take the rest of the week off and think about it. So
Yeah.
after time, you sort of learn how to compartmentalize. You learn how to like, not be too affected by it. So it's something you definitely sort of develop as the years pass.
Yeah, gotcha. How do you deal with, like, say, one of your patients that are like you're caring for maybe passes away or something on
Mhm.
your shift, and then you're upset with that, and then you kind of then your shift ends, and you go home or whatever, and then you've got to just like go to, I don't know, your friend's birthday party or something, and it's just kind of like you just have to kind of carry on with your life, normal life, but like you've
Yeah,
had this kind of crazy stuff happen at work, like that
yeah.
must be a challenge to deal with.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is a challenge. A lot of times, when stuff like that happens, you just don't want to carry on with your day. If you have something social planned, you kind of like, oh, I don't want to.
Yeah.
But I feel like not going about your day also makes you feel even worse, even
Right.
sadder. Like if I were to just go home and just like, sit with my dog, sort of
Mm.
thing, it doesn't really
Help.
do anything. Yeah, it doesn't really help. So like I'm really lucky to have friends who sort of understand what my job is like. So I usually like, I still turn up to the event, and then I'm like, hey, I had a really bad shift.
Yeah.
And then just like, tell them what happened, like, confidentiality and stuff, but just like, tell them briefly like, oh, this happened or whatever. And then just try to enjoy the good times that you have with
Mm.
your friends, and not try to let it, bring your mood down or bring the mood of like everyone else
Yeah.
down, especially if it's like a birthday or something. Yeah, so I think like coming to CrossFit, for example, is good. And like people at CrossFit know what I do for work. So it's just, I don't have to say much. You can just be like, oh, shitty day at work. That's it.
Yeah.
And then like, it definitely helps just being around people outside of work after
Yeah.
a day like that as well. Yeah.
No, I bet.
So it's
I
not
bet.
too bad. Yeah.
Something you mentioned about as well was the shift work. Like I know you work like nights sometimes. You work weekends, bank holidays, whatever.
Mm,
How do you
like
deal with
holidays.
that? Like how much of a challenge is that?
Uh, it's quite frustrating sometimes. So we have like we do get to like request, like, put in roster requests and stuff, but it's done like many months in advance. So a
Mm.
lot of times weekend stuff comes up after when your roster's already out.
Yeah.
So we try to do shift swap sometimes, amongst our colleagues and all that. But that's just the nature of a job. Like a lot of times you just sort of deal with not being able to turn up to like, public holiday events or like, concerts and like, weekend stuff that most people do. It's just part of the job. And then I sort of just think of it as, it sounds a bit horrible, but I think about it as like, oh, like at the end of the day, I go to work and I still like I get to go home. My patient doesn't get to go home. So
Yeah.
like in a way I am still, it's not the worst. And also like
Yeah.
there are many people who work shifts as well, like that are not in healthcare. So it's not the worst thing in the world. Like grateful to even have a
Yeah.
job. So yeah, I try to tell myself that, and then
Yeah.
yeah, still
No,
sucks, but
it's a
whatever.
good.
We get over it.
No, it's a great mindset to have, no doubt.
Yeah.
Um, I guess it's also pretty normal for you now as well. Like you've been doing it for 10 years. You're quite. It's just
Mhm.
that's how it is for you now. that shift work.
Yeah,
Like
it
you've
is.
been doing
Yeah.
it for, I
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, like, you've been doing this for a while. It's been your career for 10 years.
Hmm.
What advice would you give someone who's maybe, or do you give like new starters that are looking to get
Hmm.
into nursing, or like maybe just started out, or even a younger Liz? What would you
Yeah.
say to her, like about how to maybe deal with the sort of the types of challenges that you just mentioned, about how to stick at it for a long term? What would you tell that person?
Um, main piece of advice would be to have like an equally happy life outside of work, or to create for yourself like a life outside of work that is equally as fulfilling as at work. Because you don't want to get lost into like, like being a nurse being your whole identity. And I think setting aside time to do things outside of work, whether it's with other people or, doing things for yourself, like filling your own cup, that sort of thing is very important. So I think right from the start, you just need to have, you need to have hobbies, interests outside of work, like whether it's the gym or like doing stuff with friends or, going out on your own, anything, just setting aside time that is protected outside of work
Yeah,
to do that so that you don't get so burnt out and just to not lose your sort of sense of like identity in the job itself, and just knowing that you're a nurse, but that's not like all you are. You're also, whoever like outside of work, you're also like, like a dog mom, or like, you're a friend to this
yeah,
person or like whoever. Yeah, just sort of separating, I guess, your identity into work and, outside of work, which I think sort of applies to like every profession as well. When you get so bogged down with work that you forget like who you
yeah.
really
You kind
are
of you're
outside
thinking
of
about
work.
work, well, at home on weekends, whatever.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
are you quite
and
good
then
at
you
now
just
just like
like who are you?
switching as soon
Yeah,
as the shift ends,
yeah,
like nurse mode off,
yeah,
social
yeah.
time on, or whatever?
Yeah, yeah, definitely helps. It definitely helps like talking with colleagues as well. Like towards the end of the shift, like when you're just before you're about to leave. Sometimes you just need a bit of like a debrief, a bit of like a, oh my god, this happened today, and like,
Yeah,
this happened, whatever, and you just sort of voice it out, and then you're done, and you're like, all right, see you, see you next time, and then you leave, and then you're like, all right, I'm going to the gym, I'm gonna walk my dog, I'm
yeah,
going out to a party, that sort of thing. So just, yeah, just sort of leaving it there, because it's like it's 24-hour, like the hospital's open 24 hours, like you'll be there the next time you're on your next shift. So you can leave it behind. There are people who are still there, who are going to be working till your next shift. So there is no point sort of bringing your experiences home and
yeah,
having it affect, yeah, your life afterward.
yeah. Is that something you did struggle with, like maybe in your younger times?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I used to like bring it home, and then if I was like frustrated with something at work, I would sort of like be frustrated at
Mm,
home as well, and like, project it on like other people,
yeah,
and it wasn't fair for them, but like I didn't know how to deal with it either. And yeah, and you just sort of like carry that frustration on until you were at work the next time.
yeah,
So yeah, so I sort of learned it. Yeah, I learned it. Of course, my workplace has been pretty good as well in terms of like just having people around who like are also open and willing to chat. So having like work
mm,
friends as well, very useful, very important. Just
yeah,
being able to like, bounce back like your thoughts and feelings and stuff, and then being like, all right, see you next time. Let's not worry about or think about this anymore. So yeah, definitely something you learn through the years.
you mentioned there about like the colleagues that have been
Mm-hmm.
really useful to sort of bounce how you
Yeah.
feeling like with. You also mentioned earlier about like I think some like senior nurses
Mm-hmm.
helping you out in certain situations. Like how important has maybe the role of like mentors in the role been for you, like more senior nurses, people that have been doing it for longer, more experienced? How
Mm-hmm.
much have they helped you over the years?
A lot, definitely. There have been like, so there are like the really good mentors who sort of constantly check in on you and ask you how you're doing, ask you sort of
Yeah,
like, where do you want to go in the next couple of years? Are you happy in this area, or is there anything else you want to do? definitely makes you feel supported. Also definitely gives you like sort of an insight into like what nursing is going to be like many years from now, which is where they are at the moment. And then they're also like I would say like senior nurses who sort of like try to eat your young. That's like a term that we have, like nurses eat their young.
Oh
So
yeah.
there are a bit of like the tougher nurses who are kind of like who try to push you out of the profession.
Oh.
But I think it really toughens you up. So like I'm like, oh my god, should I even say this? But it's okay. I I mean, there are all kinds. So like I've definitely benefited from like a lot of mentor nurses who sort of check in on you, who sort of tell you that it's okay that you feel this way, and like this is nothing. Like wait till you get to this stage, and then da da. So um, definitely helpful because it really gives you an insight into what your career is going to be like in the next couple of years. And then there are also nurses. Like there was this one particular senior nurse that I used to see on the wards when I worked on the wards, and she was an ICU nurse, and she used to come up to see the patients, the sicker patients on the ward, and like I really looked up to her, and like she's pretty much the reason why I sort of switched to ICU nursing, why I came down, because I just like the way she presented herself. I like how she dealt with the nurses on the ward and everyone else, and she's pretty much someone who sort of drew me into intensive care nursing. So definitely very important to have like positive good mentors around.
And are you now one of those mentors to like younger, more experienced nurses?
Trying to be, yes.
Okay.
Trying to be a positive one. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, I mean, I believe like no question is too stupid. Like the younger nurses usually start with like, I'm so sorry, this question is really stupid, but then they'll ask you something that's like not actually stupid, but something that's basic, but something that a question that you have also had in your mind when you were a new nurse. So just being that sort of like person, like I try to project myself as someone who you can go to for like the stupidest of stupid
Okay.
questions,
Yeah.
like anything you want to know, anything that you feel like you're too far along to have not known, but you sort of still don't know. Like just come to me and we can like chat about it in secret, and then you can pretend that you sort of knew it all along. Yeah, so I try to be that person. I don't want to be like someone who terrorizes new nurses, obviously, because everyone's just really terrified and anxious starting out. So I just want to be like a good resource person, a good like buddy nurse, a good mentor to like the newer nurses.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
try my
that's
best.
for like any good manager or leader really in any industry. Like that's a skill, just being like open and so that someone can come to you with their problems,
Yeah,
whatever, or questions. Like if they feel they're too
yeah,
scared to ask, then that's probably a bad sign. Like not a great
yeah,
leader.
true. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
sounds like no, good on you for doing that.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
I wanted to ask about like what sort of skills, right, do you think it takes to have or to be a good nurse? Like say I don't, by the way, just say I wanted to become a nurse. What would I need just from a start? Not say no experience, but like what sort of
Yeah.
things like do they look for maybe in the hiring or whatever? Like what sort of character traits have you seen that allow people to be successful in your profession?
Um, I think flexibility and agility is very important. So a lot of times, like when you go for nursing interviews and stuff, they want they're looking for someone who is agile, flexible, able to work in a fast-paced environment. I know it sounds like every other job, and you're like able to work in a fast-paced environment. But yeah, I think just
Buzzword.
being very yeah, exactly. Yeah, the main keywords. Yeah, just being very agile, being flexible, being able to like switch your attention to things, and constantly prioritizing things that you need to do, and
Yeah.
being okay that it changes. Like when you sometimes you get so fixated on doing like one thing, and then if something else come up, you're like, nah, I'm doing this thing. Like just being able to sort of switch
Okay.
to that and be like, okay, that's more important. Let's do that. Let's put down what you're doing right now. Come back to it later. So being that, and also being a team player, which is also very cliche. I've got to be a good team player, but it definitely helps. Like because we sort of function as a team. Like our consultants, our registrars, our HMOs, all our doctors, nurses, physios. Everyone sort of works together as a
Yeah,
team. So being able to work as a team, being able to take on feedback, give off sort of constructive feedback to someone, and not taking offense when someone doesn't agree with you, and being able to see their side of things. So teamwork is definitely one of them. Yeah. And yeah, those are the main things we actually look for in hiring, apart from the usual qualifications and stuff. Yeah.
Nice.
Flexible. Yeah.
We've spoke about your past, what you've been doing up until now, what you're doing at the moment. What about the future? You talked a little bit about speaking to some of your colleagues about what the future holds.
Yeah.
And you mentioned this is the career. You can't imagine doing anything else. You're in. What do you think? Where are some of the ways you can go in this career? What are some of future goals or career ambitions? What can I expect to see from you in the next few years?
Okay. I feel like if I say it, it has to happen. I can't go back
That's
on it.
it. Yeah.
All right, let's see. Let's manifest this. I guess okay. So like I completed my masters in the middle of this year, which I guess sort of opened a lot of doors for me in terms of going for like a managerial position, or doing research, or like even doing a PhD and stuff. Like right now, maybe for like a year or two, I'm actually happy where I am. So I'm now a clinical nurse specialist in ICU. So I'm happy with where I am at the moment. But I definitely do want to embark on actually, like nursing research. I still do want to work where I work, but I would like to also embark on nursing research, and in terms of work, like how do I explain this? I don't know exactly what research is going to be about, but I just wanna expand my horizon. So I do want to take part in some form of clinical research that is going to improve patient outcomes in the future. I also do want to take up more of like a mentoring sort of position, helping newer nurses where I work. And yeah, like that's something I don't exactly know what I'm going to be doing, but that's sort of like where I'm sort of leaning towards. Yeah, not really a managerial position, but more of like a research people person, still working clinically and all that. Because I'm very happy working clinically on the floor, and I don't want to, lose my skills or give up my skills by leaving the area I work to do something else. But I would like to add on to that, yeah, by I guess doing research and stuff. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna hold you to that. No worries.
You're gonna hold me to it. I know you are. Manifest it. It will happen.
I got a couple more questions for you, Liz.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This one's maybe away from nursing, that kind of stuff. You moved from Singapore to Australia 5 and a bit years ago, right?
Yeah, 5.5.
5.5 years ago. How do you sort of reflect on like how's your life? Your life has changed. Similar time scales to myself when I made the move over here.
Yeah.
How do you feel about your life since you made the move?
I guess I'm much more happier with my life here. Mostly because I've sort of like had to build it up from scratch when I moved here 5.5 years ago. So it feels even more satisfying. That the work that I've put in has sort of, led to where I am at the moment. Definitely do feel very very satisfied, and also very proud of myself. And on top of that, I guess it just looking back at all the hurdles that I've gone through, and of course like the hurdles that you would have gone through moving to a completely different country and all that, it just sort of like solidifies what you can actually achieve. I guess maybe the challenges that you might have gone through as well. Looking back at it, you're like, wow, I can't believe I went through, I got through this, and I am where I am now. But it just sort of empowers you to think that if you were to experience challenges in the future, you're more than likely to be able to get through it. Like you can definitely get through it because you got through all of that. So has definitely improved my like perception of myself and like the faith in myself to sort of get to where I want, because moving to Australia was just like a vision, a dream, and then sort of put in the work, and then it actually happens, and then you're like, wow, like I can't believe I actually did it. So yeah, I think it really does improve your sort of perception of yourself, and yeah, how much
Yeah, it kind of like every time you kind of have a new challenge, it kind of go, well, I've done this, right, and that's all, and you've built that like stack of evidence in your past that you can do stuff or whatever, and it helps. So it's like, well, you don't quite have as much fear taken on, even if it's like smaller challenges.
Yeah, definitely. You sort of rate it based on your past challenges, and you're like, oh, that was a 10 and I got through that. This is like a 5. Like, right, it'll be fine. Yeah. We'll get through it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I got one final question for you. This is my typical closing question on the show.
Yeah.
And you can take this whichever way you like.
Okay.
Personally, professionally, what does success mean to yourself?
Success, I guess success would mean for me to be able to, like, any point from now, sort of, if I just pause and think of, am I happy? Am I actually happy with my life? And being able to say yes, that would mean success to me. Like, I know a lot of times whether it's in your career or personal life, you sort of set a goal and you're like, oh, once I get this, I'll be happy. And then you sort of work towards it. And then when you've sort of gotten it, you're still not happy. You're like, oh, but then now I want this. And when I get there, so you spend your entire life sort of like just chasing after something, but just enjoying the fact that you know whether you are where you want to be, or you know where you want to be, and you're sort of actively doing something. I feel that, and being happy with that, I feel that is success. And yeah, I wish I had more. I wish I feel like I wish I had a more, like,
That's a great answer. That's a great answer. It's something I think about. It's something I think about all the time, like that. Like, don't delay like happiness to be happier in theory in the future.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
because you see a lot of people who are like, I'll be happy when I have that promotion, or I'll be happy when I have that amount of friends or X amount of money or whatever. It's like, no, just be happy.
As soon as
try and be happy now.
Just be happy now. Yeah, just think about it like, oh, do I have a job? Yes. Am I happy in my job? Yes. Do I have, a healthy personal life? Yes. And then you're like, oh, like I actually am happy. Like, there are always going to be things you want to work towards too, but you have to be happy also in the moment, and just appreciate everything you have. Yeah.
Mic drop, please.
Mic drop. I'm out. I like that.
Out. No, jokes aside, that was really, really appreciate you taking the time coming on and having a chat with me. Thank you for running through everything you just went through there. I certainly learned a lot of stuff about the nursing profession and career that I didn't know about. And anyone listening, I hope maybe they did as well. So, Liz, thank you for coming on. Appreciate you as a friend. Appreciate everything you just shared with me there.
Lovely. Thank you for having me, Joe. Thank you.